Today on Sugar Spun Run, we'll be making homemade bread bowls. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, I'm really excited about sharing this recipe with you today because why would you eat soup out of a regular bowl when you can eat it out of an edible bread bowl? This is a pretty simple bread recipe. It does involve a little bit of technique. I'm really excited to walk you through it today. Now, for today's recipe, I recommend using a stand mixer. Though you can make this by hand if you don't have one, just expect to get in a little bit of an arm workout if you don't have a stand mixer. Now, the first ingredient you are going to need is 2.5 cups of warm water. You want this water to be between 105 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That way you don't end up killing your yeast, but it's still warm enough to activate the yeast. We'll add this to our mixer. We'll be using active dry yeast today, and you are going to need 5 teaspoons of that. Just sprinkle this over your water. We'll also add a teaspoon of granulated sugar, and you'll just want to give this a quick stir so everything's combined. Make sure you add a teaspoon of sugar and not a teaspoon of salt, because I did that last time I made these and I couldn't understand why my yeast was not foaming. All right, so I'm going to let this sit for about 5 minutes or until the yeast is foamy and not dead from using a teaspoon of salt instead, and then we'll come right back with our next ingredients. Once your yeast is looking nice and foamy, we're gonna go ahead and add our butter. You'll need 4 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter for this recipe. We'll just give this a stir so everything is combined. The next thing you need is 7 cups of bread flour. I have made this recipe using all-purpose flour, but bread flour is going to make these bowls bake up rounder, a little bit taller, makes them more bowl-shaped, and it makes them a little bit chewier, which is actually really nice with a bread bowl. It's a little bit firmer, makes for a better bowl. So I put this in a large bowl because we are going to be stirring in a few other ingredients. You'll need 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and 1 tablespoon of salt. Go ahead and stir everything together until it is pretty well combined. So now we're going to gradually add our flour mixture to our liquid yeast mixture, and we will use our dough hook in a second, but because that has trouble reaching the sides of the bowl in the beginning, I'm just going to add some of this and stir it by hand in the beginning. So just to make things easier, I've added about 1/3 of the flour mixture, and I'm just going to stir this by hand. I'll add a little bit more until it's not super liquidy. Okay, our dough hook should be able to take it from here. So now I'm just going to run the mixer on low speed while I continue to add the rest of the flour. If you guys have made any of my other yeast recipes or any other yeast recipe, then you know that the exact amount of flour you are going to need will usually vary. So what we're going to be doing is, rather than using an exact amount of flour, we're going to be looking for the proper consistency of the dough. It should be smooth, slightly sticky, but more tacky than sticky, and it should be clinging to itself and pulling away from the sides of the bowl. Now, this dough is almost there, but we are not quite at that consistency. It's still a little bit too wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to add more bread flour, just 1 tablespoon at a time, until we get that perfect consistency. And of course, I'll show you what that looks like. Now this is a lot of dough, so if your mixer is struggling, you can absolutely transfer this to a clean surface and knead the dough by hand, work the flour in by hand that way instead. I'm just going to help my mixer out here by making sure that I'm getting all of the flour that's sitting at the bottom of the bowl. See, we have a pocket right here that the dough hook's not quite reaching, and we want to make sure everything is well combined. So this is actually pretty much perfect. As you can see, it's a little bit sticky. It's a soft dough, but it's not so sticky that the dough is coming off of my fingers when I touch it. It's nice, it's clinging to itself. This is perfect. So what we're going to do is we are going to transfer it to a large bowl where we're going to let it rise, and you'll want to lightly oil this bowl. I'm just going to oil it with a little bit of olive oil. Make sure you get that whole bowl, the whole inside of that bowl coated. You just need a little bit. And we'll transfer our bread bowl dough over to this oiled bowl. You'll also want to take the dough and just kind of roll it through the oil so the entire surface of your dough is lightly coated with some of that oil. Now we'll cover this with a clean towel and we're going to let it sit in a warm, draft-free place until it's doubled in size, and that usually takes about 1 hour. It may take a little bit longer if your kitchen's a little cooler. Once your dough has risen, we are going to gently deflate it. You can see why we needed to use such a large bowl. And then we'll want to divide this into 6 even pieces. The easiest way that I've found to do this is just to transfer the dough to a clean surface. I like to lightly flour mine. And then I just like to form it into sort of a log and then cut that into 6 even pieces. Now you could make 8 smaller bread bowls if you prefer. We're going to do 6 nicely sized ones. Take each section of dough and you're just going to roll it into a nice round ball. We'll transfer these bowls to a large baking sheet that's been lined with parchment paper, and before we place them on the parchment paper, I like to sprinkle this with a little bit of cornmeal. That just helps keep the bread bowls from sticking. Make sure to space your bread bowls several inches apart. We're going to take a sharp knife and just cut an X on the top of each bread bowl. Now we'll cover these with a clean towel again, same one that I used for the first rise, and we're going to let these sit and rise in a warm, draft-free place while our oven preheats. Now your oven is going to need to preheat to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That'll probably take about 25 or 30 minutes. Once your oven is preheated, your bread bowls should have risen pretty nicely, and if yours don't look like this, you'll want to let them sit a little bit longer, let them puff up nicely. Now, before we put them in the oven, we are going to make an egg wash, which is really simple. We're just going to crack 1 large egg, add a teaspoon of water, and you'll just use a fork or a whisk to scramble these together until that egg is nicely beaten. And I'm going to nudge this bread bowl back a little bit, carefully as I can. And we'll generously brush each bread bowl with egg wash. This is going to give these bread bowls a really nice golden exterior. This one here is sinking because I moved it away from the one that it was almost touching. So let that be a lesson to you. Think ahead and place your bread bowls further apart than I did here. You want to give them space because if you touch them, they'll start to collapse. And also, because they're so fragile, make sure you are gently brushing your egg wash onto each bread bowl. Look at that, it just looks so sad. In fact, I'll probably change my recommendation that you brush these with egg wash before letting them rise. Sure, you might get your towel a little bit messy, but it'll keep them from deflating, so hopefully you're not baking along with me. Don't worry, they'll still turn out. All right, now don't get rid of that egg wash because we are going to knead it again shortly. We're going to brush these halfway through baking, but for now, we'll take our bread bowls and we'll transfer them into our 425 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven, and we are going to start by baking them for just 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, you are going to want to take these bread bowls out of the oven and we are going to brush them once more with egg wash. Now, this is optional. You don't have to do the second coating of egg wash, but I like to do it. It just gives the bread bowls a really nice look on the outside. Now we'll return these to our 425 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven where we will bake them for another 10 to 15 minutes or until they are a nice golden brown and they sound hollow when tapped. Once your bread bowls have cooled, it's time to turn them into actual bowls. You're going to want to use a bread knife and we're just going to slice off the tops. Now you could just pick the center out of your bread bowl to form a hollow center in the middle. I like to use my knife to just kind of carve the center first. And then go ahead and use your fingers, clean fingers, to pick out the bread on the inside. Don't throw this bread out. It's really good if you are serving soup in your bread bowls. It's great for adding to your soup. If you are filling your bread bowls with dip, it can be great for dipping your bread into your dip. Just don't throw it out. And that is how you make homemade bread bowls. It's really that easy. Use it for serving soup, serving dips, whatever you prefer. I'm going to be filling mine with my broccoli cheese soup recipe that I just shared the other day. If you guys try this one out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.